Chapter 13. She was in shock. She had not seen this coming at all. "You can't do that," she almost shouted. "You can't kill all those people up there." Someone stood up and responded, "We could do it in a way that would give them time to get to safety before. And then they could find a new home here on Mars or find their way back to Earth." Someone took up the thread. "Probably many of them would be grateful to be free of the burden of having to take care of that station any longer." She could not believe where this conversation had gone. Destroy that station? Out of the question. She was about to get up to have her say when Linda spoke up. "We have heard that suggestion. Let us look over other options. I, for one, would rather hear a suggestion that does not include violence, but rather a way we can make up for the damage done somehow, and a way to move forward in a harmonious way with the station and its emerging society." There were more heads nodding now than when the other woman had spoken, to her relief. Then Stan got up and walked up to the platform. "My dear fellow Martians, I have already begun work on a way to remove the AI we placed on the station from their systems. However, there are some challenges that need to be solved that can only be done from inside the station, where we can access the station systems. We may need extensive access to make sure we get every part of it, which is difficult to guarantee. While I am optimistic that this can be done in the span of a week or two, there is a possibility that our codes have evolved more than anticipated through prolonged interaction with the station systems, which would mean a considerably longer process. So we should be prepared for both eventualities." A tall, gray-haired woman grabbed the word and said, "How would we achieve that without them realizing that it was us who'd done it?" Some people chuckled at this attempt at humor during this most serious discussion. Another newcomer stood up and pointed to her. "Perhaps she could go with and explain that she had told us what was going on up there and that we want to help fix it." Someone else chimed in. "As we install the fix, we would pretend to be making system tests. Then, once we're done, we tell them that we found something, a flaw of some sort that we were able to fix. That would also put it in their favor for when the new settlers arrive, and we begin a new dialogue for the future." Murmurs of agreement spread through the room. Stan stood up and said, "I think that's a much better idea than to blow up the station. Besides, even if we were to seriously consider blowing it up, what kind of people would we be if we did not exhaust every other option first?" This received many nods and quite a few "hear, hear" of agreement. "I would like to second the suggestion of that we go up and dissolve the AI from their systems, then build a strong connection with the station and its inbound inhabitants." The red-haired woman shot to her feet. "If you do," she snapped, "you will be sealing our fate. All the life we have created down here will be supplanted by the monoculture nightmare up there. They will devour Mars as they devoured Earth." Stan met her gaze, his voice calm but firm. "There is no reason to believe that to be the case. Just as we set loose from the original plan, so were they. They are free to make their own choices on what to do. And if we help them now, maybe we can influence the path they take towards the future." A voice from the back spoke up. "We could start trading with them. Allow travel between the ground and the station through closely monitored checkpoints to prevent contamination. The red woman who had advocated destroying the station stormed out, followed by Magnus and a small group of people. With them gone, the conversation shifted to potential collaboration opportunities, what they could trade, how to begin negotiations, and what kind of safeguards would be needed. She was relieved. It seemed that calmer heads had prevailed. She listened with interest to the ensuing talks, but an uneasy feeling lingered. The rage-filled certainty in that woman's voice. The fact that she had not been alone in the opinion to destroy the station. The talks then began to go in circles. Linda got up and called for a break in the talks until tomorrow. People got up, stretched, and then dispersed off to some other parts of the compound. Linda waved her over to where she was standing with a small group of people, including Stan, Jacob, and a few others. "Shall we take a look at the tablet?" Linda said, and bid her to follow her. The group moved through the hallway until they reached a lab full of an array of equipment and tools. The room was bright and orderly. It somehow reminded her of Simon's workshop back on Earth, although his had been quite chaotic in comparison, and this one had many more machines. Linda walked up to a whiteboard and signaled for her to join. "Can you walk us through the story of how you found the tablet and what happened then? How you met Elise, was it?" Linda asked encouragingly. Vicky, who had skipped the talks but was now back and handing out cups of steaming dark liquid to people. The room filled with the smell of a smoky aroma. She got up next to the whiteboard and recounted the story of how she found the tablet down in the city roots, recognizing the mark on the back of it, then how she had taken images of the interiors and noticed the changes between them, how it had come alive. She told him about the vast library of content that had seemingly grown out of nowhere. "Remarkable," said Jacob. "Self-repairing function. That kind of tech only existed during the peak of human technology." "As far as we know," said a younger woman. "Who knows how far they have advanced since then on the outer planets?" "Probably not much," answered another. "I imagine they're too occupied with surviving the hardships of deep space to have much focus on developing non-essential technologies." Linda leaned back slightly, listening to the conversation. Then she said, "She might be able to tell us once she gets there." That met with some puzzled faces. "Her goal is to reach Saturn and find Oldest." "Impossible," one of the younger Martians said. "No one has returned from beyond the asteroid belt in centuries." Jacob chimed in. "While I would tend to agree, I'll remind you that this young girl is visiting us from Earth, carrying a living PBAI. So impossible is a bit blurry when it comes to her," he said, and gave her an encouraging smile. "Please go on with your tale." She nodded and continued, describing how the tablet had come alive and saved her from the Pobots, how it had helped her save Simon and escape the revolution by opening up the space lift. She described her shock when she learned how little energy the PBAI, Elise, had left. It was only later that she learned the truth of how it had come to the brink of death to save them and get her on her way off of Earth. She described how the tablet had seemed to change slightly over time. Certain features would emerge and then get replaced with some others. Could be that it was harvesting parts of itself to fix essential systems, searching for ways to extend its life by optimizing itself, Jacob mused. This is incredibly advanced technology. Linda gave her a thoughtful smile and said she met 3 more PBAIs after that on her way here, and knows of one more enslaved in her city, the one she came from, doing the bidding of her mother and her followers, who believed that the 20th century was the pinnacle of civilization. This met with mixed reactions of shock at the enslavement of a PBII and humor at the idiocy of admiring the wasteful 20th. They asked her some questions about the PBAIs, and she answered as best as she could. We thought they had all left long ago, giving up on humanity. This changes things. What do you say, Wrinkles? Shall we take a trip over to Earth and see if they will speak with us? Said the lady who had come with Jacob, with an affectionate hand on his shoulder. Linda got up and turned on an examination table. Right, shall we take a look? She took out the tablet and placed it where Linda had indicated. She felt her heart beating from stress of leaving it so exposed with all these people in the room. But she had made her choice to trust them, hoping that they could help Elise. The screen surrounding the table with the tablet came alive, displaying all manner of code and images. The group gathered around in a semicircle within a respectful distance. Linda brought out a machine to do an internal scan of the tablet. It was much smaller and much more compact than the one her and Simon had used back on Earth. The images loaded up onto the screens, showing the tablet's internal structure. She could tell that it had changed significantly since the pictures she and Simon had taken. Jacob walked up to the table and then looked at her. Would you mind showing us how you turn it on and access its database? She nodded and activated the tablet, opening up the inventory overview. The images on the screen shifted, mapping the interior in real time. Tiny red highlighted areas flickered, marking recent activities, then slowly shifted back towards blue, indicating a relative time of each activation. Looks like that's where the database is stored, Jacob murmured. He waved his hand over the tablet with his fingers, moving in controlled practice gestures, directing the interface. White lines overlaid the image of the tablet, moving in on where the activity had been. A moment later, data started to stream down the screen next to the tablet, and then a loading bar indicated 2%, 3%, 4%. I am downloading the contents of the database, Jacob announced. There's a vast amount of data stored in here, enough to fill a library many times over. His voice was full of awe. This will keep some of our scientists busy for a very long time. But then he hesitated before saying in somber, contemplative tone, However, this is far from enough to contain sentience. A ripple of unease passed through the room. The others leaned in and joined in on the conversation. They traced functions and guessed at the purpose of various components, admiring the optimized design. There were the occasional gasps and murmurs of admiration as Jacob dove into the inner workings of the tablet's architecture. The rest of them were observing with hopeful anticipation, waiting for the great reveal. Where was Elise? As time passed, Jacob kept exploring as the others peeled away one by one, moving over to chairs off to the side of the room, drinking more of the black, musky liquid and exchanging quiet words. Meanwhile, she stayed by Jacob's side, with her eyes locked on the image of the tablet, waiting for a sign from the ghost within. It had been well over an hour before Jacob slowly put his hands down and said, "I've learned more in an hour than I have in the past decade," Jacob said matter-of-factly. But there was something in his tone that gave her a cold feeling in her stomach. He hesitated, choosing his words too carefully. "I looked all over the tablet for an indication of where Elise might be. However, I'm unsure how the PBAI could survive in there." He looked at her solemnly. "I worry that perhaps the tablet was forced to harvest too much, that your friend may be gone." She went white in the face. Gone? The word hit her like a blow to the chest. No, it could not be. "Wake up!" she cried out before she could stop herself. For a second, nothing. Then, the image of the tablet ignited. Every component surged to life. Its entire internal structure blazing red. "I am here," appeared on the tablet. Then leapt to every other screen in the room. Everyone went dead. A second passed, feeling like eternity. She watched as the internal scans of the tablet remained red, as every atom in the tablet seemed to be active. "Are you okay?" she asked worriedly. "Not at my best," smiley face appeared on the screen, followed by, "You got us to Mars. Pretty impressive." Then every light in the station pulsed in unison as a surge of energy rippled outwards. The lights went out and then returned a moment later. The image of the tablet began to fade from red to blue, with the exception of a few small areas. The ghost had awakened and then gone back to sleep. At least she knew it was still alive in there. A stunned breath escaped from someone. Whoa! And then breakup. And then Jacob broke the tense vibe in the room. "That was fucking epic." She felt tears of relief roll down her cheeks. Elise was still alive. She opened the status overview in the tablet to check how much that had drained the remaining energy reserves. 0.001. That was even lower than before Nix's. The ocean city had given her the small boost. Before she could spiral into worry, the buzzing of others pulled her out of it. They were chatting over what had just happened, theorizing what it all meant, having a feeling as if they had just been in the presence of the divine. Jacob, however, was already back at work. His eyes raced over lines of data, a small smirk of satisfaction growing on his face. A moment later, he looked at her, grinning, and said, "That was very useful. I see now why I could not find where the Elise resides in the tablet." He looked around the room as everyone was staring at him in high anticipation. "It is the tablet," he told them matter-of-factly. "Every molecule is programmed on a quantum level. It is a level of science so far beyond anything I have ever heard of." That gave her worry. "So, can we not help her?" she asked worriedly. Jacob's eyes gleamed. "That's the best part. Elise seems to have left us some instructions. In that brief moment, she seems to have scanned everything, our entire systems as well as the stations. I have no idea how it was able to do that, but she mapped out everything we need to do. There's a list of parts from down here as well as up there, and instructions on how to assemble it all." "To make what?" Linda asked. "That I don't know. It does not say," Jacob answered. "First guess, I would say some kind of very complicated quantum charger to extend her life. I suppose the only way to know is for sure is to build it. That was great news. She wiped tears from her face and moved over next to Jacob to look over the instructions. They described things and objects that she did not recognize, but this gave her hope and drive. So where do we begin? Linda was on Jacob's other side. It will take some days to go over all of this and make preparations. We also have to finish our congress as well. Decide what we will do once the station begins to fill with people. This is sure to influence that conversation. Most of the group left shortly after, off to sleep or prepare for morning. She stayed with Wrinkles as he kept scanning the instrument and making notes of his own. She fell asleep on the sofa and woke up a bit later. She was alone, but someone had put a blanket over her. The tablet was still on the table, so she grabbed it and made her way to her room and fell asleep almost instantly. The next day, when she arrived at the meeting hall, it was clear that the attendees had been at it for some time. The room buzzed with a quiet intensity. Clusters of people engaged in hushed yet urgent conversations. There was writing scrolling in real time down every screen, depicting proposals, counter-arguments, and rapidly evolving plans. It seemed that all the communities on Mars were participating, not just the delegates present. There were voting numbers that showed that 98.5% of the Martian population had voted on some issue. She scanned the room for someone she knew and spotted Linda, at the center of a very large cluster, gesturing with sharp focus on some diagrams. Jacob was hunched over a terminal, likely still unraveling the mysteries of Elise's instructions. Marcus had been speaking with a red woman. When he spotted her, he came over and asked if she had slept well. She answered yes, and then asked him how all the other colonies were able to participate in this congress. He told her how there were wires all over the planet relaying communications, that the network had been built to relay weather data, and for emergencies mostly. However, it was also used on occasions to tap into the planet-wide brain power like today. That way, no one person gets all the power, and everybody has a say, Magnus told her, and then excused himself to go speak to a cluster of engineers. Biggie appeared at her side, handing her a steaming cup of something rich and fragrant. "Big day," he said, flashing his usual grin. "Your friend has caused quite the stir." "Yeah, seems we have that effect wherever we go," she said. "Did I miss anything important?" "Only the usual existential debates. What does this mean for us? Can the station caretakers be trusted? Should we allow people from Earth into our ecosystem? And of course, what's for lunch?" He smirked. Jacob's got half the scientists scrambling to decipher her schematics. The vote on the station's future is still ongoing, and people from every settlement are calling in to weigh in. Key voting outcomes. Preserving the station. 91% approved. Only 5% voted in favor of destroying the station, while an overwhelming majority rejected that course of action. This outcome reassured her, confirming that calmer heads had prevailed. Sending a delegation to the station, 83% approved. Her name was listed on the board, marking her as a part of the official delegation that would travel back to the station. Assisting and fixing the cascades, 78% approved. The Congress had voted in favor of extending an offer to help fix the issue. claiming to have learned from her about the decades-long cascading failures aboard the station. She still felt uneasy about deceiving the caretakers, but if it meant resolving the problem, she could justify playing along. Constructing the mystery device. 100% approved. The most unanimous decision of all. Once they understood that Elise, the PBAI within the tablet, had provided the schematics for an unknown device, the entire Congress agreed that every effort should be made to build it. A PBAI, a relic from humanity's golden age, was in their midst, and the chance to save it was too important to ignore. She admired the process. Every idea seemed to be put on the table, discussed openly, and refined in real time. It was democracy at its most productive. Decisions weren't bogged down by endless debates, but shaped organically through collective reasoning. As she understood it, once the process had run its course, those gathered here would fine-tune the final plan, delegate roles, and ensure every aspect had built-in redundancies. She was pulled into discussions and was pleased to find her insights taken seriously, integrated into the evolving strategy. The weight of her presence settled in. Her arrival had become a pivot point, shifting the course of events in ways she had not anticipated. 2 days later, the final plan was set. Only the core team remained to work out the details. She learned that a crew led by Magnus was already inspecting an old orbiter that could get them to the station and back, while essential components were being uninstalled from ground bases and prepped for transport to construct the mystery machine. At some point, she found herself sitting with a group of attendees, listening as they recounted past projects and speculated about the near future. It hit her that the sheer magnitude of change unfolding around her. The station, once a forgotten relic in orbit, had suddenly become the focal point of the entire planet. The next few days would decide not just its fate, but the course of Mars and its relationship with the stars. She realized that she enjoyed being in the middle of all of this. It gave her life meaning somehow, being the catalyst, an enzyme of history. On the last day of Congress, Vicky brought her back to reality. Some of us are meeting up in the big central dome to jam. Would you like to join? Do you play an instrument? No, but I would love to hear you play, she answered. They joined a small group of people in the largest dome, filled with large patches of greenery. The scent of damp soil and blooming flowers hung in the air. After short introductions, they began to play with their various instruments. It sounded alien, chaotic, almost disorienting to her. It lacked the structure of melodies that she was used to. Yet there was something alive in it, something shifting and evolving. Seeing her confused look, Vicky peeled off and sat next to her. I guess you've never heard Gene music before. She shook her head. He plucked gently at the strings of his banjo as he explained. We're playing DNA sequences, genetic codes turned into musical notes, woven into an evolving melody. He strummed a few more notes and smiled. Most of the time it sounds messy, but if you listen closely, you'll catch moments where the patterns align, when the codes hit harmony. He exhaled with something like reverence. And when that happens, it's, I don't know, deep. Like it resonates with something ancient inside of you. Then he returned to the jamming band. She did her best to listen, focusing on the shifting rhythms and tones. At times it was pure noise. But then, just as Vicky had said, there were brief moments of perfect alignment when everything converged into something hauntingly beautiful. Then a ruckus by the edge of the dome disrupted the jam session. Two pairs of people who had been speaking and listening started yelling loudly. "They're going to destroy everything we have built. Are you too stupid to see that? You don't know that. You can't seriously think that killing all that life up there is the solution." "Of course I can. Destroying the station is the only way we can be safe. Future Martians will see the truth." "You are certifiably insane, you know that?" "No, you are crazy. If you don't think the people from Earth won't come down here and take what they want, just like they always have." The argument spiraled from there until the two who had argued for the destruction of the station stormed out. Biggie came over, scratching his head. "Well, that was fun," he said in a sarcastic tone. "That was scary," she said, feeling the tension fading. "I can't believe that they want to destroy that station. Probably if they saw how it is on the inside, they would change their mind." Biggie frowned. "Maybe, although some people can be remarkably obtuse."